Welcome everyone to the Teach Access Student Academy. This is Rolando speaking. We're ready to start our day. We have a full agenda packed of great sessions, and we're looking forward to our day. Just so that you know, we're committed to making this event accessible. You can turn on the captions by using the CC button at the bottom of your screen or your Zoom toolbar. There's also American Sign Language ASL interpretation available during sessions. We have highlighted them in our screen so the recordings can also show the interpreters. And finally, if you need any help, send us a message via the chat. A little bit about Teach Access before we get started. We help educators teach accessibility and disability inclusion. We support students to acquire accessibility skills, and we partner with industry to share real-world practices. Just like today, we have partnered with Microsoft, who's presenting the Academy. Our goal, accessibility is a core skill across disciplines. All of our programs and resources are free for students and educators. Just a recap of a glance of our schedule for day one. We have our welcome and keynote with Jenny Lay-Flurrie at 12:45 p.m. Eastern. We have a panel on gaming accessibility at 2:15 p.m. Eastern. We have a session on alt text and image descriptions at 3:15. We have a session on disabled expertise and techno-ableism. At 4:15 p.m. Eastern, we have a panel for U.S. Research for Accessible Design. And at 5:15 p.m. Eastern, we have a fireside chat with emerging accessibility professionals. Our schedule for tomorrow continues at 11 a.m. Eastern with a welcome like this one and a featured panel with leaders from different organizations talking about how accessibility and disability inclusion helps innovate work technology and drive innovation. At 12:45 p.m. Eastern, we have a session on AI representation. At 1:40 p.m. Eastern, we have a student showcase showcasing tactile coding blocks. At 2:15 p.m. Eastern, session on using personas to design for differences. At 3:15 p.m. Eastern, accessibility testing in the age of AI. At 4:15 p.m. Eastern, accessibility, the skill that future proofs your tech career. And again, at 5:15 p.m. Eastern, we're close enough with a fireside chat to highlight that accessibility is and should be everyone's job. So throughout this academy, we want you to build skills to understand disability as a lived experience. We want you to be able to design with, not just for people with disabilities. Ask thoughtful questions about access and inclusion, and connect accessibility to technology, policy, and ethics. Just so you know, we have curated a variety of sessions for you today. We have our keynotes, which are longer talks that introduce big ideas and set the tone for the academy. We have panel chats that bring, or panel or fireside chats that are conversations that bring together diverse perspectives and experiences. We have skills sessions to build specific accessibility skills and showcases to highlight practical accessibility ideas and solutions. There are multiple ways to engage throughout the day. You can participate in the chat. We always keep it open when we start. During the presentations, we'll turn it off, and then we'll open it again during Q&A. You can ask questions during Q&A using the Zoom functionality. You can take notes or don't take notes at all. Quiet listening counts too. And it's a long day. We have a long day ahead of us. So step away, stretch, or take breaks as you need. This event would have been possible without our sponsors, so thank you to Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, ADP, Meta, and Skyscanner. And with that, I'll hand it over to our Executive Director, Kate Sanka, to lead us into the keynote.
Thank you so much. This is Kate speaking. I know that right now we don't have chat activated for you, but I'd love for you all, wherever you're joining us from, to just give a round of applause to Rolando where you're at. and the rest of the team. We've had wonderful, wonderful volunteers helping to put this together, and we couldn't do this without everybody. So thank you to everyone who's contributed to planning this event. We're so glad to have you here joining us from wherever you are. Again, my name is Kate Sanka, and I'm the executive director here at Teach Access. And we're thrilled that you're spending this time with us, whether it's right now live in the session or you're revisiting these recordings later. We really hope that throughout the next 2 days, you'll really gain some great insights, new ideas, get excited about accessibility, and take that into whatever work you're doing, the classes you have, and so forth. So to kick us off, I'm beyond thrilled to be able to introduce our keynote speaker. Again, a big thank you to her and to Microsoft for supporting this event and keeping it no cost for all of you. The title of her talk is Building for Everyone. And you'll be hearing today from Jenny Lay-Flurrie, who very recently had a title change, and she might share some of that, or it could be a good question to ask about later. But Jenny is the vice president for the Trusted Technology Group at Microsoft. Prior to stepping into this role just a mere couple weeks ago, she was leading at Microsoft as the Chief Accessibility Officer for the past 10 years. And she worked across the company to design and build accessible products, services, and workplaces. Jenny, identifying as deaf and disabled, she brings a user-centered perspective to her work, and she views accessibility as a critical driver of innovation for the world. She leans on the insights of employees and customers to create technologies and services. And she's launched initiatives like the Disability Answer Desk. She also refers to it as DAD, so she might talk about that later, which has provided technical support to more than 1.5 million disabled people. She's worked on the Neurodiversity Program, as well as the annual Microsoft Ability Summit, which is a phenomenal event. You should all check that out later this year. It's now in its 16th year. And so with that, I would love to welcome Jenny today to share some insights into what she is working on. And I will remind you, we do have the Q&A feature. So as you think of questions, please drop those in there and we can return to those later. So Jenny, take it away.
Wonderful. Good morning, good afternoon, folks. Jenny Lay-Flurrie. It is a real honor to be with you all. I'm excited to dig in. We've got a lot of content to go through. Don't be scared by that. We're going to walk into accessibility. Many of you, this is your everyday, your every hour, your every minute. Until a month ago, it was mine too. So I'm going to give you some concepts and some of our learning that we have taken over the many moons and many decades. We're going to do a little bit of history. We're going to do a little bit of AI. And what does that mean as we think about accessibility in this new chapter and new decade? First of all, just to explain a little bit what Kate said. I am now the new leader of the Trusted Technology Group. And what does that mean? Well, it's an honor. It's a privilege. And I'm 4 weeks in. So I know enough to be dangerous, not to be smart. But here's the way to think about this in your hands. Microsoft has this mission. It's had this mission since 2014 to empower every person and every organization. And I love that mission. That has been a gift to us in the world of accessibility. And in my 21 years now at Microsoft, I did start when I was 3 years old. It has helped us to make sure that we stay focused on delivering products, services, digital or physical, that empower everyone, inclusive of people with disabilities. But we're not the only domain. There are other areas where that becomes equally important. And so the remit of my new team, working with an incredible bank of very senior leaders and experts, is broader but inclusive of accessibility. We have digital safety, making sure that our products are built to empower safety for children and for adults in all of the different ways, all of the many harms that happen in the digital realm. We're looking at resilience. We're looking at privacy, responsible AI, which is clearly top of mind for many folks in this new technology era. And we're also looking at technology that is good for society. We do look at elections and campaigns. We make sure that we are building with human rights in mind and that our supply chain is built for everyone. All of us wallow in some of what is Microsoft. We're around 230,000 people around the world. We have about 6,000 different products. Some of those you will know very well. Windows, Xbox, Office. Some of them are new and evolving. Copilot is our latest AI. We have not just that, we have 530 buildings around the world. So physical accessibility is important to us. And we operate in well over 150 countries. So if you combine all of those facets and you look at this new remit, I've got some really big priorities. We need to make it easy and simple to work within our team, looking across accessibility into other areas, drive consistency so that every single person behind me in Redmond, which is where I'm sat in Washington State, in the top most corner of the United States. It's not raining here, by the way, for those that do believe that it rains all the time in Seattle. It does, but just not today. All of those folks behind me know exactly what they need to do, how they need to do it, and they're able to do it easily, consistently, so that we are delivering trusted technologies. And then work with our external partners to make sure that we're doing two things. We're listening, we're hearing the feedback, and then we're really making sure that we iterate on that and we earn your trust. Our goal is to build trusted and trustworthy computing. And that becomes really, really important as I boil back down to where I've spent the last years, the last 10 years, decade of my life, and in many ways, the 21 years that I've been here at Microsoft and the years before it, which is accessibility. So let's bubble into some basics a little bit before we go into the latest technology. And I have put up a slide that includes things like, my goodness, the first typewriter, Louis Braille, the first Braille typewriter. I'm looking at old pictures as I go back into where accessibility came from. And by the way, this is really fun to do. If you want to have, and instead of doom scrolling, you want to spend some time just pulling up any AI and asking about the history of accessibility, you will find fascinating insights. The one that got me that I didn't realize was that the electric toothbrush, 1927, and in fact, it further evolved into the 1950s, was developed for people with limited mobility by a Swedish doctor who wanted to make sure that it was easier to get into all those crooks and crevices and put an oscillating motor in there, which then he found was incredibly empowering for those that had limited mobility. If you go back in the history books, what you find are some very common themes. Disabled people have been at the core and at the front of innovation, not just for decades, but for centuries. And that is incredibly important and a principle that we need to carry into every era as we go forward. In fact, as I came into this role, I came to Microsoft in 2005 to work on a little product called Hotmail, and very quickly got involved in the disability community at Microsoft. I am deceptively but profoundly deaf. I cannot hear your voice. I am British, and my first job at Microsoft was in London. And what I learned is that while I could gain a job at the company, I needed accommodations, assistance, and best practices from my colleagues in the deaf community, which at Microsoft is called Huddle. Huddle being a Gallaudet term, Gallaudet being the most amazing university on the East Coast for deaf in sign language. Reaching out to that community enabled me to learn the insights and best practices I needed in order to operate a Hotmail team working across Europe. That insight is really important as we zoom out a little bit. I'm sure some of you will know some of these stats. 1 billion people plus, in fact, the stats do vary. Some say 1.3, some say 1.6 billion people of the world are disabled in some form. Disability defined slightly differently, country by country. In fact, one of the efforts we've been doing is working with World Bank to really harmonize those, to make sure that there is a global standard for disability and a global understanding of the definition of disability. One of the biggest areas that's growing is neurodivergence. 1 in 5 now identify. That's 53% of Gen Z, over 70, it's about 73% of Gen Alpha. I'm a mum. I have 4 kids. I am stepmom to 3, and between us 4, our youngest is 18, and the 18 and 25-year-old both identify with very, very different presentations of autism. They also will come in and share other aspects of neurodivergence, whether that's anxiety to ADD and more. It is fast evolving, but what I do love is the pride and identity that comes with it. My 18-year-old is one of many who will walk in the room, and this will be in her opening introduction to herself. 83% of us will experience some form of disability in our lifetimes, situational or temporary, and those are important, particularly to a tech company. Why do we spend our wheels on this? It's not because of social good, although that is important. It's because this is important to our bottom line. This is important to Microsoft. It's important to a technology company, and I would contest that it's important to everyone, because what you need to do is wallow in that. If 83% of us are experiencing disability, breaking a leg, having an instance of anxiety or mental health, developing a disease, that means that we need to be designing and building for that community. And what you'll see as we go through, as history has shown us, it will also unlock innovation. And most disabilities, which I remind people of all the time, are not apparent. You do not know if a person walking in the room has a disability. It's one of the most important things I say to anyone. Be inclusive at all times. So, wallowing in this mission, empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. When this came in 2014, with our new then CEO, still our CEO today, the one and only Satya Nadella, we all breathed an enormous sigh of excitement in some ways, because it enabled us to not just create something for accessibility, but lean in for accessibility being a core part of that mission. How has accessibility evolved? Well, here's some of the basics. And I will say this has changed dramatically in the 10 years. When I came in, while accessibility has had a 30-year history, in accessibility, in fact, if I go back in the history books, there were accessibilitarians, which is a beautiful term for our accessibility experts at Microsoft. Those, I can see seeds of them in the 1990s. That's where some of our first team started. We also had employee groups that started at Microsoft in the 1990s as well. We are a 50-year-old company for context. In the last 10 years, though, we've developed system thinking around accessibility. So we take our core inventory, which is the number of products we have, and buildings, and now data centers. And then we focus on how can we make sure that we're building those products accessibly by design from the start, always our goal, that we lean on the insights of people, disabled people, to make sure that we are building them right. We partner vehemently and carefully with organizations to make sure that we are pulling in insights. Our employees will never represent everyone on the globe. And then we partner to work with, influence, advocate for policies and regulation that exist on accessibility and disability. It is a bit of an ecosystem. We are dependent on each one of those 4 arms. And what it's meant over time is that we've been able to build some foundational core things that have become very important to Microsoft over time. One of those is skilling. And that's why we're here today. We're here to learn. And I love Teach Access and what they do to empower this across industries, across companies. And thank you for spending your time here today investing in your skilling. We made accessibility a mandatory skilling at Microsoft. That was a big deal for us. No one likes mandatory training, but we made it as fun as possible thanks to the genius of Erica Zimanowicz, who is our just incredible accessibility skilling training expert on the team. Since she launched that training, we've had 2 revisions of it. Every employee, in fact, 98% of Microsoft employees have taken that training, which means that they now know about some of the core foundational basics of accessibility, disability etiquette, how to build an accessible product, the resources available to you to assist you in doing that, and the core, not just optional ability and requirement for accessibility, but the absolute fundamental need for you to be building inclusively. We're empowering our employees with skills in the same way as you're empowering yourself today. We put in a core foundation of inclusive design. In fact, this website just re-released 2 weeks ago, and all credit to Anna Cook and the entire inclusive design team. And here's why it's important. Accessibility, and you will follow regulatory and compliance frameworks, they will help you to be minimally compliant with what you do. But what we want to do is take that as the floor, not the ceiling. So we needed a design principle that would help us to deliver for that opportunity of humans. We needed design principles. And so there's 3 of them: recognizing exclusion and seeing that as a constraint that you can design around. So if someone is deaf, their constraint is they will not hear the audio. What are the other ways to design around that? Which is, by the way, equally as important for people traveling on public transport and not wanting the audio to bug their neighbor. Captions. 50% of people in the United States watch Netflix now with captions. That's a big shift from 10 years ago because people recognized exclusion and designed for it. We solve for one and we extend to many, and you're going to see those stories in a minute, and we learn from and exploring our diversity. And then the third one was listening systems, and this one is what Kate mentioned. I have a DAT team. In fact, they sit right next door to me. Neil Barnett is the leader of that team. He is the acting accessibility CAO right now as well. This team has been around since 2013. It was designed from a really basic core principle, which is that Microsoft receives a lot of calls from customers. In fact, it receives hundreds of thousands of calls every single day from Xbox, Windows, Office, Azure, and more. But what we weren't doing was providing a service for our disabled customers that everyone could access and would have specific information on accessibility. That was my hunch. And what I had to do, I had a little tiny pocket of money that I was given to experiment and see if that theory or that hypothesis was right or wrong. I did a ton of mystery shopper calling, which, by the way, is super fun if ever you want to do it. The first thing I did was really pick up the phone and pretend to be my aunt who was blind and used a product called JAWS, which some of you will know is one of the screen reading, incredible screen readers available. And what I found, being very humble to my dear colleagues in Microsoft, is that no, we didn't know what JAWS was. This is 2013. And actually, some of the responses I got were actually quite funny. It was, do you mean the movie from 1975, JAWS? What that meant and that experiment led to us creating the Disability Answer Desk. This is now a dedicated team for customers. Whether you are a consumer or you work within a company, it is free. It is available 24/7. And what it enables us to do is to provide accessibility and disability expertise to customers. But the gift for us and for me and the accessibility team is that we get a wealth of feedback and insight, which helps to fuel the ecosystem as we go forward. So if you think about that as the core foundation, and there are many other pieces, and I'm sure you have questions, and I'll keep an eye on that, it has enabled us to, over time, produce products that are, yes, minimally compliant, but have gone beyond that and upwards to that to design inclusively and release products that help empower the disabled community. And I want to give you a quick sense. First, hardware. Let's talk about hardware. I think hardware is very important. And we've had a lot of learning here, and we continue to learn. Each one of these, and there's 3 on the screen, came from those inclusive design principles. And in fact, most of them came from hackathons. Hackathons, probably my favorite week of the year, where you get a gang of folks with passion, with varying disciplines and expertise, coming together to understand a constraint, learn from it, and then design for one and extend to many, those 3 inclusive design principles. Our first one was the Xbox Adaptive Controller. And here's a little backstory. This one was a serial hackathon project. It actually came in 2 years in a row into what we had then, which was these big tents where we would invite people in. They were quite hot. Air conditioning didn't happen in the first couple of years. And the theory was that we could do a better job of designing for veterans with disabilities who love to game after they came back or they were in recuperation, but using opposable thumbs on a controller wasn't always the right thing to do. That evolved into the Xbox Adaptive Controller, still available today. In fact, all of these products are available on our Microsoft website. We wanted it to not just be functional and be easy to use, but look cool too. That being othered with technology, I think, is an important aspect, particularly as we then understood the 400 million plus disabled gamers out there wanted to look just as hip as any other gamer. Since then, we've also had the one-handed joystick that actually came out last year. And some of that methodology went into helping us to create, and this is where I have props, our mouse. And I love the mouse. The mouse is kind of the awesome thing because we wanted to make sure that we had a mouse that was also adaptive for different disabilities, whether it was arthritis or muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, whatever it may be, from child to adult. So that little piece at the top is actually the mouse. It is the smallest mouse that Microsoft has ever produced. It has a little thing that kicks off the back, and then you can add tails to it. You can 3D print your own tails. The CAD files are online for you to have fun with in your garage or your library. And you can also customize them for you, whether you want one that's easy to move or has got some drag to it. And we produced a couple of tails ourselves. This is one of them that I'm holding. And I actually like this cute thing because you can also make it right-handed to left-handed, real easy with just a snap of the bottom. Left-handed, right-handed mouse. We also found that it's the easiest mouse to travel with because you can just slip it in a pocket. But really simple adaptive accessories, which also then led us to explore keyboards. This is our Surface keyboard. I have it on my machine right here. And what we found and the feedback we got, again, listening to that feedback, was that we needed one that had a bolder, stronger font. It had better lighting in the background, and it was easier for everyone to see. And this low vision keyboard is available alongside all the rest of them. And we're finding that it is the one that folks select the most. Hardware, I think, is clearly important, and we continue that hardware journey. But I also want to clearly talk about some of these foundational items when it comes to what's the core and fundamental within Windows and Office, are 2 really long-standing and legacy products. Here's the design principles. We build it in, we make it easy and discoverable, and then We start to play with shortcuts in a way that makes it stick in your brains and becomes part of your daily use. That's our theory. And what we've shown is that that works, albeit with more to do. One of the first features we put out was Read Aloud. That now has 10 million active users a month, free, available just in the browser. Immersive Reader, designed for dyslexia. And if you have a kid with dyslexia or you're reading long, dense documents, helps to highlight and separate even nouns and adjectives. You can customize it. Again, 1 million active users. And then Accessibility Assistant, which used to be called Accessibility Checker, making sure that whatever email you're sending, you turn this on by default, and it will help you automatically now, and we'll get into that, add and make sure that your documents, your emails, your presentation, your whatever you're doing in Office is accessible and inclusive. Again, on the principle that you don't know who you're sending this to and whether they have a disability. And that's not to ask them about that. It's to just make sure that what you're sending is inclusive. All of this under Windows key U. Software becomes incredibly important to be easy to find and easy to use. And this was one of our biggest learnings actually over the last decade. This is a little GIF that's just showing how easy it is to get to the accessibility settings. You just type the word accessibility. And here's where I go back. Some of you will remember we've had previous versions of Windows 10. This used to be under a phrase called ease of use. And we weren't seeing the usage of it. And that was kind of a little bonkers for us. We were like, why aren't we seeing the usage? And it was because no one knew what the phrase was, ease of use. We did a bit of market research. We even spent a tiny bit of money on that. And the result findings probably won't surprise you. It came back with saying, hey, Jen, no one knows the phrase ease of use. Why didn't you change it to something that people will know? How about the word accessibility, which I know is revolutionary, but that's what led us to changing it in Windows 11. And of course, packaging. You can't produce anything if it's hard or impossible for the intended customer to be able to open it. Packaging needs to be sustainable, accessible. And so as we were going through this process of reimagining our hardware, our software, we needed to reimagine the box that it came in. This is the Xbox Adaptive, which was the start of this journey. And I can tell you, we spent months on this, making sure that it was easy for anyone to open with a single loop, and the loops became important to us. Slide out, no clamshell, no plastic, and easy to also then get into the power cords with no zip ties, just an easy loop to unpeel that and get into the devices. So foundation. And there's a lot in that foundation which I think is very important when we think about the era of AI. Now, I think it's important, firstly, to sort of frame the principles of AI and what are we talking about with AI. Firstly, as many of you know, AI is not new. AI has existed since the 1950s. It has had different chapters within it. The new chapter that we are all leaning into, and you're seeing in the press as every tech company is building more concrete and data centers in order to help fuel this era, is because this is a profound generative AI chapter. That means that we're able to build very quickly, leveraging an enormous amount of data. But what we have to do, and I'm going to dig into some of this as we talk to what that means for accessibility, but there are key principles that we have had right since this chapter began, in fact, before it with the previous chapter, to build inclusively, to make sure that we are inclusive of disability data and that we foster innovation. Again, the same principles as before. We build technology that is minimally compliant, but go beyond. And our goal is that, not the floor, but the ceiling. So that means that we are really wallowing and spending a lot of time thinking about the library of data I have a picture here of Dumbledore's library. I am British, folks. I do like Harry Potter. And this is just the way of me really thinking through, what does this mean in very physical terms? When you have a technical construct that's quite abstract, what does that really mean? And this may be far too simplistic an analogy for some, and for some it may help, but this is all about making sure that we are stacking the infinite library of Dumbledore's room with the right books on the right shelves, with the right guidelines around them, that where books exist on disability, we are promoting them. Where books don't exist, we are fueling them and adding them. And that's been very, very material. One of the key issues with this chapter of AI is what we are training AI on. Every AI is being trained on a library of data. And as many of you know, the data on disability and accessibility is woefully low. Many AI has been trained on what exists in websites. 98%, approximately, according to WebAIM, of websites that exist in the world are not accessible. And the societal lens of disability does need to be adjusted. Many people do not see disability as the talent and skill set as we do. So let me put this in more pragmatic terms. As we've moved from traditional AI and machine learning into generative AI, which started in November 2022, and now we're looking at agentic AI, which is where an agent can leverage multiple parts of those libraries and do the work for you autonomously or manually. There are implications for disability. If I think about traditional AI and ML, we actually were the first app at Microsoft to launch leveraging this technology in 2016-17. And that was a product called Seeing AI for the blind and low vision that used traditional machine learning AI, meaning that we could train it on what was an image. Is that an umbrella? Is that a dog? Is that a dog holding a bone? What kind of a dog is it? And that meant that we could put that in a free app that is still available today, is still evolving today on Android and iOS, and empower blind and low vision to really understand and take pictures of the world around them, and now moving images, and get that described by AI. Then you add generative AI, this 2022 chapter that started with Bing Copilot. That is where you're able to use far more books on the shelf in order to generate images, audio, video, and more. Now, here's the challenge with that. The great news is that gives us the capability to breathe in far more data sets very, very quickly. The challenge is that if you don't have the right data on disability, how is that proceeding? And then agents. How can you leverage agents to do multiple layer processing? Agents, when I think about people with ALS, a brutal disease, MND as it's known in the UK, can really remove someone's voice and capability as it atrophies every muscle in your body except the eyes. It can enable you to have one agent that will allow you to use your personal voice, recording your voice or leveraging a tiny amount of data to issue your voice, even though your voice has been removed by the disease, and then leveraging some agents to very quickly still communicate with your loved ones. There's upside and there's downside, and we have to mitigate and approach these thoughtfully and carefully. What we want to do is really push that upside while we're mitigating the risks and doing it in a way that scales. So how have we done that? Well, we're still on the journey, but there's a couple of really, really good examples of where we're seeing profound implications of AI for disabled people. One of those is with a partner that we love and adore called Be My Eyes. They have been a partner of ours since 2017. They actually started with us to help us with the Disability Answer Desk. We integrated their capability into DAD. Why? Well, Be My Eyes is another free app. It is not Microsoft. It is predominantly for blind and low vision, and it gave in the beginning a very quick capability for an individual to call to get assistance and help from somebody with sight. Fantastic if you're trying to solve a technical problem and you're trying to solve a problem of why is my error message coming up, or not that this ever happens in Windows, a blue screen. Really for us, it was about helping that customer to resolve the query quicker. We then added them into Windows. We've added it into the store, and then Be My Eyes added AI into their process. All the way through, we've been able to keep that connection very close. And what it means now is that if you're blind and low vision and you have a technical problem with Microsoft stuff, you are able to call us using Be My AI, and 60% of those calls will be solved by the AI, and you don't have to wait for a human. Is that a good thing? That's a magical thing. That's meant, and the feedback that we hear every day is powerful. It means that if you're blind and low vision and a technical thing comes up, you can get it solved quickly, fast, without waiting. That's independence. And that's why we're promoting this. It also meant that we could work with Be My Eyes because they had a lot of data that, with the individual's permission, with the right consent, we could actually take that data on what was blind use of technology, canes, dogs, just things that are every day in a blind low vision life, and we could harness that data. We actually bought it and we put it into our library. We put those books onto the shelf for every part of our AI infrastructure, so that our AI at Microsoft understands blind and low vision better than it did before. A powerful sort of full ecosystem example of some of the work that's been going on. We've also been tackling imagery. And last week I had the privilege of being in Vienna to talk about some of this with a dear colleague of mine. But here's what we found very scientifically. Disability objects appeared 17 times less in AI models, which meant that the accuracy when somebody was trying to create an image of someone with autism, blindness, deafness, using a wheelchair, was often inaccurate. In fact, it was 28% lower accuracy. And if you did this, and please play with it, go into any AI and check it out, you will find occasionally harmful assumptions, stereotypical assumptions of blind people wearing ski goggles, which we all know is just not the case, or inappropriate language being used that may have aged out or just has never been appropriate. What we've been able to do is quite systems-wide thinking. Sinead Burke kicked me off on this one. In fact, she sent me a text message. Sinead Burke is an incredible leader. She is CEO of a company called Tilting the Lens based in Ireland. She works all around the world. She partners with Gucci, Chanel, Vogue, and many, many more. She was just announced literally on Monday that she is also one of the key folks behind the Met Gala this year, and we are cheering her on. But she wanted to use AI to generate imagery of disabled people, including herself. And she sent me a message 2 years ago, a text message. And by the way, you don't have to do this. You can just contact Dad. You do not have to text me to get improvements in our products. But the message was quite blunt. It was, this image is not good. And she had tried to create an image of herself wearing a leather jacket, looking hip, on a call, working with her colleagues, and the imagery, I cannot even put it on the page, I think, but I will say that's what it was. Mortifying, clearly not representative. So what we did is we went back into different classes of disability, starting with little persons. And we contacted the Little Persons of America. We contacted Blind Kilimanjaro Blind Trust. We contacted several nonprofits and said, help us to put more books on the shelf. Help us with imagery that would make our AI more representative and authentic of disability. And 2 years on, we've been able to do that for several classes of disability with more to do. Little persons, autism, Down syndrome, low vision, and blindness. And the results, you'll see, they have really significantly shifted. When Sinead spoke about this last week, the things that she noted, I think, are very important. It wasn't just about the obvious basics. It was about making sure that it wasn't just a little person's, but this type of specific disability within that and the classification within it. So the right nose, the right ratio of forehead to rest of face, details that honestly matter more than anything else. So far we've talked about Be My Eyes, we talked about images, and let's just quickly mention speech as well. Speech becomes and is always important. What we need to do with these areas, and for speech in particular, is make sure that speech is improved very carefully, again, with using the same principles and approach to make sure that speech recognition understands disabled voice. And so in this instance, this has been another partnership where we've worked with University of Illinois. They are the independent host, partnering with 5 different tech companies, Microsoft being one, to gather, again, more books for the shelf, working with organizations like Team Gleason and nonprofits around the world, garnering, making sure that privacy and security of those voices, they're anonymized and they're held in the right way. And then what that's meant is that we're able to improve speech recognition for disabled voice. Our statistics, now that we're 2 years into this, we have improved Azure speech recognition by up to 60% for everyone as a result of this work. And that becomes really very important as we think about making things like dictation easier and quicker. The sound on this, unfortunately with Zoom, I cannot share sound in this video and sound that I have. So I'm going to give you a sense of what this is. This is actually a quick demo done by an amazing person on the team, Christina Mallon. She leads inclusive design at Microsoft. She has ADHD and she cannot move her arms due to ALS. Technology was not built, and these are her words, with users in mind. And she's using a feature called fluid dictation that has embedded some of those speech models, as well as some of the generative AI principles and around grammar and making sure that sentences move quicker. And what she says, and she's dictating into this, I have trouble organizing my thoughts and I struggle with grammar, so I must edit what I dictate using a foot mouse that clicks one letter at a time on this on-screen keyboard, and which is on to the right. He said, how can I leverage AI to do this quicker and challenge the status quo? All of these have enabled her to be able to speak into a Windows device and be able to write memos and documents using a foot mouse and allowing the AI to do the work to correct the grammar, the sentences, the commas, the language, and do that more powerfully. All of these give us a really new set of profound features that enable us to then design for disability in a different way. So what does that mean for me? This is my world. This is Microsoft Teams. I do use Zoom, but most of my day is spent in Microsoft Teams. My sign language interpreter is on the left, and I have a number of features that I use all the time. One, she is profiled. I actually have sign language recognition in Microsoft Teams. I can see when somebody is signing. I do voice for myself, but I always want to know when somebody who is deaf and signing, with sign being their first language, is speaking. That focus remains on them. I can then use very clear, well-executed captions that identify the person speaking. I have a transcript, and I can use AI. Again, Microsoft's version is Copilot in order to generate a quick summary of it. I can ask it and give me coaching. Did I speak too much in that meeting? Was there a tone that I missed? Was there intonation to some of that content? Are there some quick agendas, results, feedback that I can wallow and take into the next one? What did I miss? I'll just give you perspective that when I joined Microsoft in 2005, I had to use a product called Link Communicator, and I loved it. But with the benefit of hindsight, my brain as a deaf, disabled woman was doing far more cognitive load than it has to do today. Although I will say in the last month, my brain has been exploding in a new job. That's a different problem. But from an accessibility lens, I'm able to use these tools because of AI, captioning, transcript, sign recognition, and summarization. Those four did not exist. Do they supplant humans? They amplify and help humans. In 2005, I had to request captioning and sign language with an average turnaround of 48 to 72 hours. And every time the meeting changed, I would have another 48 or 72 hours to wait for that accommodation. I still have interpreting today, and sign language remains incredibly important and will forever be. But the supply and demand is a challenge. What I now have is independence. I can call and organize my kids' pediatric appointment, something that I would have to lean on my husband for, which, by the way, he does not love. And so it gives me the independence to do what I need to do quickly and with speed. As we look forward, I think this is where things become quite fascinating as we think about the implications of AI. Agentic AI is the chapter we're in right now. And this is where you can create multi-layer agents that will do work for you. So as we think about what does that mean, there are multiple different agents that I think we're already seeing implications of. As new regulations come in, which is happening quicker and quicker in this world, across the globe, we're able to very quickly understand what is the scope of those for my products, for my 6,000 products. Which of those do we need to adjust, change, and move into? If I come into work and one of the common pings I get is, hey, my kid's just been diagnosed with neurodiversity, where do I start? Or I myself have been diagnosed with neurodiversity or believe that I am, because we don't ask for medical diagnosis here for an accommodation. Where do I start? Some of the co-pilots that we have here, the agentics, these are literally able to be created in about 2 minutes. Help me create an agent that pulls together resources for neurodiversity. You power it with the books. Which libraries do you want it to reference? And again, one thing I will say as a hint and tip is clean up your libraries, clean up your data, clean up your Word documents and your stores of information. And then you can create an agent, a chat environment that you can publish very quickly to empower people. You can edit it, you can check it, you can test it to make sure that it's referencing the right materials and summarizing them in the right way. But instead of you having to field those singular emails every day, you can give people tools that drive independence. These are some of the things that I think are going to be incredibly important as we go into this world. But I would be negligent if I was to say that that's going to be our solution. The stuff that I honestly get quite nerdily excited about is AI and where this is going. AI, I think, is going to be helping us to not just empower us with information, but I think tackle one of the systematic issues with accessibility that exists in the world today. Around 50% of issues in accessibility are because we didn't design and build it right. The bugs that many of you are fixing every day happen in design. How about we just build it right? And the easiest way to analogy for this one is if you are building a physical building like the one I'm sitting in here, and you're sitting there as an architect looking at the blueprints. In America and in most countries in the world, you would have the foresight to make sure that you were giving a stair-free entrance into the building, that you had elevators. You would understand that stairs are great for some. They're good vertical, they're good on space management, but they're not great for wheelchairs, for wheelie cases, for skateboards, although you may not want that. And you would build them into the blueprint. Sadly today, most coding environments allow you to publish code that is not accessible. So can we tackle that? That's where I get kind of jazzed, because we have the potential now with generative AI and vibe coding, which is basically instead of writing that line one, go to da da da, you're just writing, hey, can you write me an app that will do these different things? And you're writing it in natural, plain language as you and I would speak to one another. And that will create the code that you then use to create whatever widget, code, website, app, or function you're trying to build, vibe coding. You don't have to be, although we still suggest you do, a computer science engineer to build product anymore with AI. Can we make that vibe coding so that it is accessible? In fact, not just for accessibility, is it conformant and compliant? Is it building code that just makes us more trusted across the board? The answer is yes. And I think we're early as an industry on this one. And many companies are going to be pushing out great things in the next months and years to come. Some of the great examples that I am seeing with some of this are coming from not just Microsoft, but coming from others. I had the great privilege of talking recently with DQ. DQ's an amazing company if you haven't heard of them. Preeti Kumar is the CEO. They do amazing work. And they are really powering some great things on building more accessible products right out at the gate. But just to give you a sense, Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is a really powerful environment, think of this as Office and Windows all combined. We have had for the last decade a feature called Accessibility Checker. We moved it, by the way, from a Gringotts Vault menu that existed right to next to accessibility is next to spell check, because we believe that that's where people would go to check their document before sending it. What we've been able to do is add far more capability into that. So instead of it being a check test, a spell check test, it is doing what spell check has done very well over the years, which is just fix it for me. So if you have an image, it will now create and use generative AI to create the alternative text that goes into that. If you enable it, it will do it by default. It will still ask you to check that text. It will still ask you to make sure that it is okay before it sends. The human always has to be in the loop, co-pilot. But it's moving it by default, by design. What that could mean is that if we think about the number of documents that exist in the world, we could render them accessible just by writing them. It's also giving us the capability to understand math equations, a really important function. Math equations have always been hard. How do you take what is something that is quite hard to put into a document and impossible for a screen reader to understand, and how can you make sure that it has that really down in the right way? It's giving us more and more capability, and I think there's going to be more coming out from that. And then if you look at GitHub on what they're doing with Ed Summers and the team, they've done a great job in actually putting accessible code recommendations into GitHub, and they have brand new function. This was launched in October There's a wealth of information available if you want to check this out. But again, that key principle is exactly the same: building accessible, trusted, and trustworthy technology, and also tackling that systematic barrier that exists today, where we majority spend our time in bug fix as opposed to building by design. All of these remain in product today. And I want to start to close up and move to Q&A. I'm hoping that folks have some questions. I see some in the chat there. To what does this mean for the future? Well, we've been having pulling in some great research experts to give us some sense of where things are going. I do think that accessibility is going to evolve very quickly in the next couple of years as a result of AI. I do think that some tasks, which bluntly shouldn't be on disabled people to do, but are today, like having to use technology to render things accessible when they're given to them, not. I do believe that that will release a lot of cognitive load and capacity. My hope is also that we're able to move things into design and we move out of bug fix. However, in both scenarios, the potential, if we're not careful, is for it to go the other way around and actually expand the divide, not reduce it. So we have a responsibility. And I think the responsibility is for us to lean into this moment, to make sure that we are powering this moment and that we are advocating and we are adopting AI and we are helping to chart the course. We asked Forrester to revisit a study knowing that where we were with AI and how we believe the opportunities and risks are taking us, to understand how this was being propagated, what was the actual understanding of AI in the world right now. And we did this because in 2003, Forrester and Microsoft, before my time, did an incredible, what became a landmark study on accessibility and disability. That study really did look in at what was the future of accessibility and technology. And I want to just place this in time. This is 2003. That is the year before the iPhone. So this was before you can imagine us all doing these things. So this is right the way back. And this was when assistive technology and accessibility was just evolving. There was features in Windows that had been there a while, but some that were brand spanking new, and many people didn't know about it. A lot of it came under ease of use. That landmark study said that 57% of the population could benefit from accessibility, but very few knew about it. 57%, that's important. 57% as compared to 15 to 20% of the population with disabilities. Why that number so big? Because accessibility makes it easier for everyone. Where's that number today? Well, Forrester did an analysis and they came back with results that surprised us. 70% now could benefit from assistive technology and have difficulty with daily tasks. Assistive technology is not this niche thing anymore. It is absolutely embedded. We all pinch and zoom. We leverage captions. It is there. And AI was actually having very, very positive results. But majority of folks were not aware of the advancements or the enhancements that had happened with it. And 66% would use more assistive technology with the AI enhancements. What it said to us, and it's worth reading the full document, folks, this is a research paper, it is worth wallowing in, is that it's really important to everyone to invest your time to skill up. The pace of technology right now, the pace of change, the pace of new, it's faster, I can say, in my 21 years at Microsoft, in 2026, than it has been in any previous year that I've had the privilege of being here. It's fast. I'm spending 2 hours of my time every week just reading and playing and skilling up. And I really suggest every single one of you do the same thing. There are some great skilling things out there to help you to do it. This is one by Founders, which again is not a Microsoft. We did help them with it. And you'll see many Microsoft employees as a part of it. It was created in the UK. It is a really cool skilling. It doesn't take long to do. It covers an enormous amount of different stuff. And it covers some of the basics that I've walked through. It covers the foundations of AI, all of the different features, how to build responsibly and ethically. It's a really good one. And the most important part, it is free. So add this to your Teach Access repository of skilling, invest your time today, and also check out some of the many resources that we have, playbooks, depending on the industry that you're in. As we continue, one of the most important things that I think, and why I'm just so grateful to be a part of this community, but also know that this accessibility world will forever remain important to us, important to me personally. It's just, we share. We are all going to learn and advance on accessibility. And my goal for us all is to continue to do that as quickly as we can in this era. But we should all make sure that we learn together. And so whatever we learn, whether we get mistakes and make mistakes, which we have made many, or we see advancements and opportunities by industry, by segment, by type of customer, we're going to publish those. So these are some of the industry playbooks for financial, transport, retail, media, and government. But know if you check out our accessibility website, you will find many more. And with that, I will pass back to Kate and the team and stop sharing and see if there are any questions that we want to dig into.
Beautiful. This is Kate speaking. Jenny, thank you so much. I always love hearing about what you're up to, and I always learn something new. I even wrote down specifically that 70% number because it supports our vision of everybody should know something. Everybody will come into contact with disability at some point, whether themselves or someone they know. So that was really a great little piece to get, and I know that we'll be sharing that out. So thank you again. That was so great. And we do have a lot of questions in here. So I may jump around. I'll read them out for you, Jenny. And then we'll see how many we can get through. If we can't answer all of them, our team will try and reach out to folks if we can and share more resources. So first one that I want to share here with you. Someone says it's awesome that you pay attention to needs and care. They're curious, after something like a hackathon or other sourcing, how you test with the disabled community to make sure it is truly helpful and not a projection of engineers.
Yeah, that's a profound question, and there's you're gonna have to guide me how long we have, Kate. You and I know I can talk. I do think that's a question that we've spent a long time figuring out the right systematic approach. Bearing in mind that with the role that I have, it's not just thinking about how can I make one product representative and usable, but how can I use that process and scale it across every product? So we do have actually multi-layers of testing, and that's how we've ended up sort of navigating around it, which is, or of course, there's the basic testing, some of which is automated, some of which is manual. And then you go above, and we actually incent that, by the way. I think that's a very important for all the accessibilitarians out there that are working on accessibility in their companies that may be struggling with, how can I make this, make people want to be a part of this, or feel like this is a really, not just a good thing to do, but a cool thing to do and important to my business. We needed to incentivize it, and the carrot is always more powerful than the stick. So that was building banks of resources of disabled community, whether that's gamers or folks who use Windows or use Office, we push out beta products and say, please test this and tell us how not just compliant, conformant, but usable it is. And we incentivize to go from conformant to usable and also to paradigm change, right? That is the ultimate. That's when we bring out the bells and whistles, because we want to change paradigms. We're not going to impact the employment education rates if we don't change some paradigms. So yes, there is a system to it. Is that going to catch everything in the world? No. And we have had instances where we've tested and tested and tested, and we launch and then we have very quick learning. And one of those, maybe 5+ years ago, is we launched a version of Office for Mac. And a lot of these products now launch synchronously and daily, monthly. We launched that out to the world. And we got very quickly a slew of calls into the disability answer desk that it didn't work well with Zoom Text, one of the third-party assistive technologies. Within 24 hours, we'd pull that release back so that we could do the work to fix it. And so I think that's where I come back to why it's so important to have listening vehicles in addition to testing, and have a learn-it-all thinking and approach to it, not a know-it-all.
This is Kate. I love that example because this is something that we also try to express to students and to faculty, is that we're never, quote, done with accessibility. There's not a moment when you're like, okay, we never have to think about it with this product or service or whatever it may be. We do our very best with what we know, and then we're prepared and ready when, like you, get feedback from the community saying, this isn't it. It's not working. Okay, let's address it. So I really like knowing that at any level, any size company, that holds true. The next question I'll go to from someone, they say, Jenny, I really appreciated how you framed accessibility as a mandatory skill. That truly resonated with me. As someone early in my career, the more I learn about accessibility, the more I want inclusion built in from the start. With AI tools and workflows evolving so quickly, how does Microsoft approach continuous learning for product designers? What does ongoing skill development typically look like in practice? I know you touched on it a bit, but I thought as an early career question might be good to revisit just a little bit.
I love it. One of the things that we launched in November, so yes, learning is definitely a continuous function now. And if you're going to invest your time, which again, I strongly suggest everyone does to stay current, one, don't believe you're going to know everything that's out there. It's very hard to keep up. And I'm saying that, and I'm full on nerd. I love to dig in to what's new and exciting and fun and see how it works or doesn't work. I think just taking piece by piece, I would just say on a very pragmatic level, don't try and learn it all. Just take one piece and go as deep as you can and move to the next. Otherwise, you will blow your mind up. But we did launch some agentic AI skilling in November. And Kate, I can get you that link afterwards. That is public, free, out there. It's part of our learning environment. And all of our accessibility books are on those shelves. And so, one of the other things is not just producing accessibility specific training, but embedding accessibility into mainstream and not just employee, but customer facing training. And agentic skilling is kind of fun because we didn't just focus on, is it going to help you with learning accessibility? But we also worked on, could I create myself a skilling package? Because I'm neurodiverse, I prefer it to be in voice and turn it into a podcast. And so we worked on the methodology along with it. So it wasn't just the content, it was the format. And so, yes, I think that's where we're going, is agentic skilling that leverages the latest books that are available on the shelf. And also gives the ability to customize it into the version that you want. The one version that I want is a sign language version. We're not there yet, so we've definitely got more to do. But yes, that is definitely where I'd advise people to stay current.
This is Kate. Thank you for that. We have more questions than I think we'll have time for, so I'm just trying to pick out a few that looks like people were excited about, or that people were wanting to get answered. So, next one here. Do you think that by having a push towards vibe coding for accessibility, it might take away the focus of learning inclusion for developers? Are you seeing anything there?
This is where I think we're in the middle of this chapter, and I think it's up for us to define where it goes. There is the possibility for vibe coding to really propagate accessibility and embed it from the start, meaning that no matter what you vibe code, there is automatic inclusion of accessibility. It is addressing and accepting accessibility and including it just off the bat without even asking. It is asking, or it's asking the prompts and the questions and the gates. Hey, are you sure you want to publish this without alt text? Are you sure that you want to put this out there without captions? Are you sure that you want this navigable without the name group function going up there? Blind people won't be able to use it. And being able to have that conversation with an individual. There's also the risk that vibe coding excludes accessibility and other trust domains because of the pace at which it's in development. And I think that's the risk benefit that we need to hold carefully in our hands, and we need to invest to make sure that this era moves right. What I'm kind of excited about is that even me, who I used to code a bit as a kid, I went to music college, by the way. I did not study computer science. I was a classical clarinetist. Even I can now vibe code stuff and get pretty good results. That's fun. But what we need to make sure is that it's autonomous on accessibility.
This is Kate. Thank you for that. And that brings up another thing that we often share with students that you kind of touched on with your own personal experience is there are many spaces for people to be a part of the accessibility community doing this work. So we do need folks who are very technical, right? They have a lot of deep technical training and understanding around accessibility. We also need folks who are working on the community aspect. How are we making sure we're all working together, training, etc. At a large company like Microsoft, have you seen that to be true, where you have folks who have all different types of backgrounds working around and within these spaces?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I came out of arts, and I really did believe I was going to be a musician when I grew up, or a music therapist was my backup, or a teacher. I ended up getting a job in IT to honestly pay the rent, and then just found that I absolutely loved it. And so I would say that, and I'm having this honest conversation with our kids at the moment. I have a 25-year-old who is determined to be a librarian, and an 18-year-old who wants to be a special ed teacher, and game on to both of them. Do I know do I think that's where they'll be in 10 years? I have no idea. But I keep saying to them, follow your passions, do what you love, and what you're good at. Don't try to be artificial. If you're really not good at writing essays, being an English professor might not be your future. And so, yes, I do think it's actually important if you think about AI as a humanitarian it's an intelligence form. We need multidisciplinary thinkers. The accessibility team at Microsoft is very multidisciplinary. We have a technical arm to it. We have a non-technical arm, which is anything from folks with law degrees and clear expertise in some areas, policy, folks who have come through humanities and arts, some who have not gone to college, have become incredible accessibility leaders. So again, follow what you love, follow what you're good at, and just work hard.
This is Kate. Thank you so much. That might be the advice we were looking for, but we have just another minute left here. Is there any advice what additional advice maybe that you would offer to any of our students or early career attendees here around being in the space, working in accessibility?
I would reflect and say, I've had sort of 3 chapters to my career so far. There will be more. Accessibility will be a chapter that remains with me always. It is part of my new remit and my new team, and it has been the most empowering, incredible chapter of all. I'm incredibly proud to be a very small part of the Microsoft journey. And if you're considering different options, really weight this one. Accessibility is hard and will also give you the most reward, because you are building for the world. You may think you're building a little thing and a little thing. All of those little things accrue and they have impact for humanity as a whole. So just keep going. Lean and leverage your peers, your colleagues. Some of my dearest friends are people who work in accessibility across the industry. I call them and say, I'm having a tough day. Lean on one another, build your network, build your friendships, and go make a difference in the world. I'm excited to see what you will create.
This is Kate. Wonderful, wonderful words to end on. Thank you again, Jenny, so much for making time for us. We really appreciate it. We're excited to see where you go in your new role and are excited to keep seeing what Microsoft is working on. So thank you so much again for joining us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. And with that, I know there were some questions we didn't get to. Thank you so much for all of your engagement, everybody. We are pausing here for about 15 minutes. And then our next session, I know there were some questions about this, so I hope you'll stick around. The title of our next session is Leveling Up, Making Games Accessible. We have a really good panel together to talk about those topics. So I hope you'll join us for that. And thank you again, everybody, for being here. And we will see you in a little bit.